guys, welcome to TST Garage. I'm Bart. In this video, I'll be working on the 2021 and up Yamaha MT-09. What you see behind me is the SP version. Our Elite 1 Fender Eliminator that you see in front of me fits universally between the standard and SP versions of the 3rd gen bike. The base component of our Fender Eliminator is the Undertail panel. It replaces the entire stock Undertail panel that's in this location under the tail. The stock one features a hole that allows the stock fender to pass through and mount to the frame. We've closed that out on our panel. We've added some cosmetic raised areas. And what you see here is our new lock cover mechanism. It enables you to insert your key, get it into the key cylinder, turn it, take it back out, and that closes for you to prevent grime, debris, and water from entering into your substrate. We have redesigned the look of this Undertail shape-wise, but we wanted to keep the same design language and curve congruency to the OEM components. So as you see, it'll fit perfectly with the side tails, and then it'll also be texture and color matched. What you see here is our integrated taillight for this bike. We also have the plastic duct components on our taillight, color and texture matched to all of these tail components so that you have a nice congruent look. It looks like it rolled off the factory floor, looking just like that. However, we've actually improved the look through these components. Now, this is the base component of all our Fender Eliminators. It is also available as a closeout kit. So you will be able to purchase this separately without the license plate holding hardware in case you already have some kind of a specific or homemade license plate bracket and all you want is the actual replacement for your OEM panel. So we'll make that available to you guys as well. All of the installation steps specific to the installation of the Undertail panel by itself are the same as within all of the installations of these full Fender Eliminator components, so we will not be launching a separate video. You just follow along with the steps and ignore the steps necessary for the license plate holding brackets. When you replace your OEM fender, when you remove that fender, you're removing your signals and you're removing your license plate light. So something will have to be done to replace those components. We offer a separate universal license plate light kit that you can pair with one of these Fender Eliminators. We don't include it by default. There are specific reasons for that, but it is very easy just to include it with the buy together module or just drop it in your cart separately and you'll get those components together. Within these installation videos, I will be showing how to route the license plate light so that you have success going in and making sure that everything fits together just right. But we do have a separate video available covering just the installation of the license plate light. So you can find that on our website, tstindustries.com, or on our YouTube channel. Moving over to the topic of signaling, we will be offering you guys 2 different videos instructing how to install different signaling options, one of them being our integrated taillight. This is a very nice in-taillight signaling system. The signals are integrated into the capsule of this light. It is also programmable. Has some really cool features. I encourage you guys to check that video out on our website, tstindustries.com, or on our YouTube channel. The external signaling video will cover all the different pod signal types that we offer for this bike, all the different types of mounting methods for the several different versions of our license plate holding hardware. And in that flow, we will also instruct how to use our OEM signal remount kit if you want to use your OEM signals in conjunction with these kits. All right, we went over a whole bunch of stuff here. I'm gonna close up by just going over the materials and a few different nuances of these actual kits before we move on to the installation flow. In front of me, you see 3 different kits. One of them is the Elite 1 standard low mount, which takes your license plate mounting area and moves it down here. Some people are after that really sleek, sexy line convergence look here back in the tail, and they don't want to compromise that by putting a license plate here. So we do offer this mount. Please research the legality of these components in your area before you commit to purchase this kit. It's totally up to you to keep it safe and legal. The Elite One standard high comes with a stainless steel bracket, laser cut, bent, powder coated black for a stealthy finish. It is mounted to a CNC machined aluminum intermediate bracket base that then gets coupled with our undertail and installs here back in the tail. And lastly, we have our flagship, the Elite One adjustable setup. All of these components are made of 6061 billet aluminum. They are CNC machined, anodized black. They have a really nice gunmetal-like finish. It is the techiest offering we have. This adjustable bracket has a hinge point here, and it allows the adjustability of your hanging angle of the license plate. It also mounts to this intermediate CNC machine bracket. The entire look of this setup is just super tech. I love the look of this. It is very refined and gives you great longevity. In this episode, we will be focusing only on the rear mount version Fender Eliminator systems. So we will consider the standard and adjustable versions of the Elite One high mount Fender Eliminator. Let's get going. In the first step, we will be removing the license plate off the bike and retaining the hardware that is currently holding your license plate onto the bike. Should you need replacement hardware, we do sell these reflective license plate screws and also a nice accent kit that you could choose that has anodized aluminum washers and looks a little bit more minimal than this. It goes a lot nicer with our Fender Eliminator kits. Next, we will remove the seat. Following step, we will be removing this bracket that is screwed on with these 4mm Allen screws. All these have to come out. Please take note of the washers. Also take note how this goes back in. The actual latch mechanism is on the left side of the bike. This is how we will have to return it onto the bike. Next, we will grab a 10mm socket and loosen these nuts. All right, now we have the fender pretty loose. We'll have to find the fender lighting wiring. This is one of them. This is for the license plate light. I like to use a tiny flathead screwdriver to lift up on the locking feature, and that allows me to clear this connector from its mating side. Now, if you're going to be running a license plate light and you're using one of ours, red is positive, black is negative. If you're going to be reusing this portion of the connector, you will wire your red into the green and red wire and black into black. If you're going to be connecting into the bike side, then red will go into blue red, and then black will go into black. Now we need to snip off this zip tie here that connects all these wiring looms together. This stays on the bike. This gets unclipped. This is still the license plate light wire. Now we have these two wire sets in sheaths going to the black and white plugs. These are your connectors for the signals. You'll need to slip those off. The locking mechanism works as follows. There's an interference window here that goes onto a clip. You have to push this down to clear this out of the way and pull it out. Both of these are the same, so no worries there. All right, here we go. Let's go ahead and take the nuts off all the way. When I get to this last one, I like to hold my fender from the bottom so it's suspended and it doesn't just fall off. I dropped the nut in there. I will have to find it after the disassembly. We have one more part here that is holding this fender on, and that's this little nub. What I'm going to use on this little fastener is the backside handle of a screwdriver. Just push it out, clears out, and now just wiggle this fender off. Make sure you don't snag any of these wires. And just heard my last fourth nut drop down, so I found it. We're good to go. Now we have our fender off. Let's see what we need to do about cable management here. I like to get this guy back in here under this clip. And now we are good to go to the next step. At this point, we will be removing these 3 panels, 1, 2, 3. For that purpose, we will be using a 4mm Allen to remove this fastener, and the 3 up top here, as well as the matching fasteners on the other side. After all the fasteners have been removed, this 3-panel assembly can be stretched away from the center plane of the bike and then pulled backwards. There are 2 sliding interference clips here that slide into the taillight, so we need to clear them towards the rear. These panels just snap open and off. These are the sliding clips that I mentioned here. They are received into these windows. They need to be cleared out and away. While we have this in our hands, we could scavenge these 2 grommets. Those will go on our new Undertail. The removal of the fender on this bike renders this washer plate unconstrained. So if we were just to replace all of the components, this thing would rattle around. Let's go ahead and pull that out. I'll be using a 10mm socket on these 2 fasteners. Be careful, don't just pull that out. There is a spacer in here that could get lost. Make sure you retain them. Now we're able to pull up on this sub tray, but we still have interference from the taillight wiring. So we'll need to pull that plug out. Once that wires out and we pull up on this plastic sub tray and take this washer plate out, this will not be reused. Let's go ahead and replace the fasteners for the sub tray. All right. While I'm in here, I am going to change the taillight. This is the OEM unit. Most of our conversions, we go with our integrated taillight, so I will be doing that. It's totally up to you. These are not steps necessary for the installation of the parts in this video. I'm just gonna quickly breeze through it so that we have a nice setup when we get to the end. All right, that's good to go. We can move on to the next step. Here on the table, I'm going to show you guys just how to configure the standard and also the Elite 1 adjustable fender eliminator. And then we'll just take one of these onto the bike and show how that mounts onto the bike, because at that point, the steps are exactly the same. Now, what you see here in front of me is the module of the carrier boss that will carry either one of these on the bike. Those guys fit in here. Subsequently fasten this onto the bike. So this will be the last step. I will put those off to the side for now. These 2 Allen head screws will go either from the outside through the bracket, through the standard bracket, towards the inside through nuts, or from the inside to the outside to fasten this system onto here. All right, let's start with the simpler one. It's very simple here. This is what it shows up with. So we will flip this over, put a washer here, put the screw from the underside, and then if you notice here, we actually have precise cutouts here that make this connection toolless. We'll press this nut in there, use a 5mm Allen, start that connection. I engage the threads, but do not go all the way down. I like to keep some adjustability here in this system. Again, screw, washer, bracket, boss, and then the nut from the inside. Now before I tighten it down, I will show you guys how this is configured. We want to have these pointed sections towards the front of the bike and the angled bracket towards the rear. This will carry your license plate like this, and this will fasten to the undertail. Now, we do have a little bit of adjustability in the system here. What I'll do is just try to center it as best I can. The way this was designed was basically the width of the carrier boss is the width of this bracket, so you could pretty much just get that centered here and not on the bike. It'll be simpler just to do it here in hand. On this particular connection, we are using nylon locking nuts. So as you tighten this down, there will be no need for any thread locking agents. This is at this point good to go on the bike. If you are using a license plate light, it will route through this little window here. And then you will route this wire through the notches in the undertail closeout into the bike and connect it to the wires I showed you in the disassembly. Now, this gets placed here as a nice pass through for the wire. The license plate closes this off and only this portion shows through. It's very stealthy, very minimal, very bright. For the purpose of this installation, I'm going to keep it simple and just install this setup on the bike. I will dismantle this now and show you how to build this adjustable unit from the parts the way they come to you and how to fasten it to this setup. When you remove all the parts contained in the bag for this setup, it may look a little bit worrisome, but I will give you all the steps necessary to make this as simple as possible. Let's identify the components and see how I've separated them here. Here you have your hinges. If you notice, one side of the hinge is a straight surface and one is curved. The curved surface always goes to the rear of the bike. I'll show you how that gets configured. Here you have the small washers and the 6mm diameter screws with a button head. Those attach the L brackets to the hinges. Now here you have your L brackets. If you notice, these are mirror image components of each other. They are not the same part. So we need to arrange them appropriately. I like to lay them out on the table, sloping up. That enables me to configure all my stuff easily on the table and then just bolt it together. Now you have these countersunk screws that go through the flat bracket, through this L bracket, into the nut. Nuts are provided here. I've laid them behind this bracket here. So let's go ahead and arrange all our components properly. We will be fastening through the middle holes here. And this is what this will look like. For ease, I'll tell you guys why. We have these going through the washers, into the brackets, into the hinges, and then we have the flat bracket going onto the L bracket and all the hardware necessary to fasten those together. We will be using a 4mm Allen, 3mm Allen, and an 8mm box or open-ended wrench. And now I'll just demonstrate simply how to do this. Again, curved towards the rear. We do have a raised boss here that accepts the hole in the L bracket, washer, and screw. Now, It's very important to use a little bit of thread locking agent. I like to use the mid-strength blue. If you do not use this, you run the risk of vibration backing out your fastener, and you may lose your components, and that is an installation error not covered by warranty. Now when you get to the bottom here, make sure that you're not clamping the L bracket on top of the little raised boss. If there's a gap, you've clamped it on top. You need to make sure that it centers and the inside surface of the L bracket contacts the broader surface of the hinge. Now, I just get these down to the bottom lightly. We will be going through a adjustment of angle on the bike, so you don't want to get them too tight. Let's repeat the steps on this side. All right, like I mentioned before, we will be going through the middle holes. And this connection requires the 3mm Allen from the outside and an 8mm box from the inside. Again, we want to preserve adjustability. If you tighten it up too much, you'll have a hard time assembling it onto the carrier boss. Repeat for other side. These particular nuts have a nylon locking element in them, so they do not require any sort of thread locking agent. All right, so now we're back in this place. We still have adjustability side to side, and that will be necessary for fitting, proper fit on this carrier boss. These screws enable us to bolt these things together. Once again, use medium strength thread locking agent. In this version, as opposed to going from the bottom up, we're going to go from the top down, just like that. 5mm Allen will do the trick here. Let's thread this up. And once again, I do not go all the way to the bottom. I preserve a little bit of adjustability. Just touch bottom and come back quarter turn. Now I have this hinge just a tad bit too tight, and it would require the top screw going in off axis. So I had to loosen it up a little bit to line it up properly. And now I have it on axis, and I could get that down. All right. Now this is pretty much built, just needs to be tightened up. If we just start cranking on one of these screws, chances are we will knock this system out of alignment and won't be parallel anymore, and then you can't adjust it. So we're gonna grab a 10mm open-ended wrench. And we will make sure that the hinge is held parallel to the center plane of the bike. Tighten this down. Tighten both sides down. Now we're going to check if we still have good hinge action, and in fact we do. I'm going to keep this hinge connection still loose for now. We're going to do a final adjust on the bike. Let's grab the countersunk screws that go through here and get this on the bike. We'll use a 3mm Allen on that. We can also take advantage of using a little bit of thread locking agent on the ends of these screws. Make sure that this doesn't come loose from its receiving fastener. And now we'll transfer this to the bike. And regardless of whether you're going with the adjustable or the simple standard one that I showed you in the beginning of this section, the rest of the assembly is exactly the same. If you are running a license plate light, it'll just route through the top side here, like I showed you on the standard setup. This is actually a little bit easier, again, getting clamped by license plate. All right, let's hop on the bike. Back on the bike now. with the pre-built module. We've chosen the adjustable for the remainder of this installation. We need to install the rubber grommets that we scavenged off of the OEM Undertail into these locations here. The larger flange remains outside, while the smaller flange goes towards the inside. Now, our Fender Eliminator setup mounts through these holes into this undertail and then through taillight. Taillight actually has a stamped steel threaded insert here. There's an intermediate piece that fits sandwich in between all of that, which is the side tail. The sandwich of all of these components provides the rigidity, and then we have this longer return that was designed in to spread the forces from wind loading and mechanical loading of this mount among a broad area. Here on the inside of the undertail, you'll notice this concentric 2-ring geometry. This is a drill center. Why would we need a drill center? Well, if you are running a license plate light on this setup, you will need to make an access hole in here so that you can have a neat wire passage. The reason why we don't include a hole on here by default is because our other setup mounts the license plate here. There's no need to have a hole in here. And the whole concept of this entire component is to keep things as nice and cosmetic back here as possible and not let a whole bunch of water and grime through. So if you are running a license plate light, our license plate light, the wire is pretty minimal. A 5/32 drill will do the job. If you are not running an integrated taillight, if you do need external signals, such as our BL6, these are terminated in bullet connectors that can be passed through one at a time. And when you bulk this up, double over, because you have 2 of these, you will need a large enough hole to accommodate this sheathing. So for that purpose, I propose a 6mm or 1/4" hole. It will accommodate 2 of these and a license plate light wire if that is your need. Now, one other extraneous sort of setup that I know of is the remount of the OEM signals. We do provide a bracket that you can purchase with this Fender Eliminator setup that will permit you to remount these. The only gripe I have with this flow is that these signals have a giant connector. So you will need to bore either a really large hole to pass this through from the outside to the inside, or you will need to unseat each one of these wires from within this connector, open it up, remove the connector, pass the wires through, and then get the connector back on those terminals. That is sometimes tedious. It requires a very small pin tool. I don't like doing that, so I steer around remounting OEM signals with this type of a setup. Or if I need to, I just bore a giant hole in there and it passed right through. And if you're okay with that, that's cool. All right, for our purpose, we do have an integrated taillight. We don't need any additional wires except the license plate light wire. Grab a 5/32 drill bit here. Make sure not put your hand behind here as you drill. Go nice and slow. This is polypropylene plastic. It cuts pretty nicely. You don't want to go too fast. All right, let's see how that fits our wire. Very nice. All right, so I will grab my Fender Eliminator bracket, pass the wire up above here. On the table, I showed how to route the wire through the standard setup. This license plate light will be sandwiched here in between the license plate and the plate bracket. I will now route this to the inside. Make sure it goes up through this area here. Let's go aft of the seat latch. That way wires don't have to pass by it. And now I will get these two sliding locks into their windows in the taillight. Now once that's captive, I'll support this here and going to get the shoulder screw into the forward locations here. That will just keep this on the bike for me somewhat. All right, that's self-supporting now. Let's grab the side tail pieces to interlock with their appropriate windows on the undertail. This tab here fits in between the undertail and the tail light, so you may need to manipulate that a little bit. It'll make an audible click when it snaps in. Repeat on the left side of the bike. Now I'm going to get a few of the fasteners into this setup so that I do have a self-captive assembly. I have now replaced all of the fasteners for this 3-panel setup, except for the ones that go in here. These will be replaced by the countersunk screws that came with this whole assembly. Let's milk out some of the slack from this wire, superimpose this here where it goes, and these will be the mounting screws for this location. We need a 3mm Allen, and sometimes it is difficult to find the thread on the receiving side here, so I will manipulate the taillight up and down slightly while I turn the screw, and that's what permits me to find the thread and start it. Repeat on the other side. All right, now we have all of our fasteners in. None of them are tight. So let's go ahead and start tightening things down. I will first tighten down on these connections here, 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 here. Same locations on the other side. These are just suspension screws, meaning that they go through grommets and everything's just suspended, but it is free to move about that fastener just a little bit. The 4 fixed locations are here, 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 and here. I like to tighten those at the very end while I perform a procedure that ensures even gaps all around this assembly. All right, so now I will look in the forward section and see what natural gap forms here between the side panel and the undertail panel. And then I will adjust this by pulling or pushing on it to replicate the same width of that gap throughout. And then just go ahead and tighten it down all the way. Don't want to over tighten this, just enough so that you are comfortable knowing that this will not vibrate off on you. Same procedure on this side. Now I will also adjust the gap around the taillight here by pulling in or pushing out and tightening down on this screw, and then subsequently the left panel in mirror image. Again, tight enough to hold it in place, do not over tighten it. Now I will just route this wire all the way back to where it plugs in. All right, so I've routed this wire around these components, around the sub tray, in between the sub tray and the subframe here. Comes into the battery compartment. I've tucked the excess under the fuse box. And now we have our connection wire right next to the license plate light connection. On this particular bike, the connection has a black wire for ground and a blue with red trace wire for the positive, black to black, red to blue-red. Our license plate lights come with these posi tap connectors. Let's make use of those. Small cap, large cap. Let's remove both. Large cap goes around the wire being tapped into. Little piercing element inside this component pierces through the insulation and makes the connection for us. Let's get this slit around the wire that we will be tapping into. Then thread on the main portion of that body of the connector. Before I go ahead and connect it in, I'm gonna tap the other wire. Sometimes I don't have enough wire exposure on the wires being tapped into, so I'll need to cut back on the insulation, the shielding here. I think I have enough now. Let me give that a try. Yep, that'll do just fine. What I like about these connectors is that they are toolless. All you have to do is turn them in, they tap, and they leave all the rest of the insulation intact, so you don't have any water penetration in there. All good to go. Now we'll grab one of the smaller caps that came out of this connector. Get that around the wire that is being connected into this circuit. So through the ribbed portion and out through the threaded portion, and that gets threaded in to the small side of that posi tap. Once I tighten that down, I give it a little tug, make sure that it's actually staying in there. Repeat on the other wire. Again, tug test. Now I will power it up, make sure that I have light coming out of the license plate light, and in fact I do, so that's good to go. I'll just make sure that it's not obstructing anything else, it's out of the way. Anything I put in the trunk will not alter that connection. That looks good. So at this point, since we're already up here, I may as well replace the latch plate. All right, the last steps here will be to mount our license plate on the bike and then perform the adjustment of the hanging angle. As you can see, I have this license plate facing the sky, so that's probably not really good. Typically, we instruct to reuse the hardware, the license plate hardware that came on your bike. For this particular unit, I will be using our optional cosmetic anodized hardware. You do have this in several different anodized colors to suit your taste and needs. So a quick note here, we are sandwiching the license plate light in between the plate mount and the license plate itself. There is a red strip here that you saw before I mounted the license plate on here. That is a double-side adhesive. It is a 3M high bond double-side tape. It is very, very powerful. I only use it when I absolutely have to. It is there in case you want to use it. If you don't, I've typically had good success just sandwiching them and leaving them be. All right, that's tight. I'm gonna grab a 4mm Allen, unlock my hinge point on the adjustable license plate bracket here. Center my license plate light so everything looks nice and center. All right, now we have to decide what angle we want to be at. Word of caution here, if you do have some tightness in the routing of your wire, and if it's already tight, when you go to pull it down, you may create tension in this wire. You might pull it out of the circuit. You don't want to do that, so check that first. Make sure you have slack. Adjust your license plate angle and then push it back into the desired length. if you leave your license plate like this, there's a very, very good chance that during suspension travel, the tire will hit it, bend it, and you will have a damaged plate, and possibly it'll rip it out of the whole setup, so you don't want to do that. I like mine on this angle. I'm going to lock it down here. Push my wire in. It's actually pretty good the way it is. Give it a power up test. Good to go. All right. All right. And here come to a close for the replacement of the seat. As you can see, this is a fairly straightforward and painless installation. It takes just a couple minutes to produce these great effects. We've mounted this undertail here and we've transformed the entire look of the bike. If you like what you see here, check out TSTindustries.com. We have these components ready to go. We also have a whole host of different parts for this bike and other bikes you may have in your stable. Hit like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Ride safe. See you later.